I want to tell you a little story first. Actually, before that, I just want to say, for those of you who may not know who I am, my name is Angela Hagler. I'm a writing coach, creative writing instructor. I'm a communications professional working with a local construction engineering architectural firm in Charlotte. And I tell you what, one of my passions in life involves writing and helping others write. And I had great success with that when I did the Mama Stories book anthology collaborative project with 12 other women, Mama Stories, Gifts from Our Mothers. And so I want to start 2025 off right with a live learning. I've got a slow connection, so bear with me. Not sure why that is. But I wanted I told you a little bit about me, and now I want to tell you a story. When I first started writing, I had this story that I wanted to tell, and I kept taking that first paragraph of that story and just rewriting it and rewriting it and rewriting it to perfection. And I was surprised, I think later on down the line, when I started taking some courses and learning that wasn't necessarily the best way to approach writing. And that being to just keep going over the same sentence, paragraph, first page over and over and over again until you get it 100% perfect. I learned about something called free writing. And in free writing, what that means is you write without ceasing. You write without thinking. You shut off that inner editor. And when I say not thinking, I don't mean you turn off all thoughts, and that is a bad thing to think. Not at all. But what you do turn off is that inner editor that is so mean to us, to our poor little creative being that's trying to form, that inner editor that's like our second, third, fourth, fifth grade teachers who were instructing us sometimes harshly, or all the red ink that we may remember seeing on papers when we were writing. We need to shut that inner editor off. Shut that inner editor completely off and use a tactic called free writing. I'm going to share a definition of free writing that I like to use when I teach my classes. It comes from a book called Imaginative Writing, and the author of the book is Janet Burroway, who is an excellent writer and one that a lot of experts go to especially when they're first learning about creative writing and how to write creatively. They go to Janet Burroway. So I'm going to read this right from the book. And so we're talking about free writing. And Gertrude Stein called this automatic writing. Either on a regular schedule or at frequent intervals, sit down and write without any plan whatsoever of what you were going to write. Write anything that comes into your head. It doesn't matter what it is at all. This is the equivalent of volleying at tennis or improvisation at the piano. It puts you in touch with the instrument and limbers the verbal muscles. So that's the general definition and terminology of free write. There's also something called a focused free write. Hi, Trilby. And the focused free write is where you pick a topic and focus on it. Write for 5 or 10 minutes, saying anything at all about it, anything at all in any order. So you might be wondering, how can I apply this concept of free writing to the writing that I may want to do? What if I'm working on a novel, or I'm working on an article for a magazine, or even when you're working on a piece of writing that you might need to do professionally for your job? I like to call it, in addition to free writing and that official term, I like to think about it as just letting the faucet flow. Just turn, how when you have you're turning on the water and you're at a sink in the bathroom or in the kitchen or what have you, and you just turn the faucet and just let the water flow. That's what I mean by using that in your life. I can remember needing to write, say for a press release in my communications life. Sometimes I get all the facts down, and then I just write whatever comes to mind, without worrying about whether every little a, and, or the is in the right place, every grammar, period, comma, colon is in the right place. Just letting it just flow all over the page, then go back and look over it and sort of structure it and add your quotations and your your commas and your punctuations and things like that. That can also be used when you are working on a piece of nonfiction, like what we did with the Mama Stories project. Often, many times I would bring the authors on, and we would have a topic, and they would just freely write with, I'd set the timer on and just let them go for a set amount of time. That's what could be considered a focused free write, where you're giving a timer and just letting things flow. Again, you can always go back and edit later. I don't want us as writers, as creatives, as people who are working on an assignment, to get so caught up in the technicalities that you don't allow your brain to just flow like the faucet, to just free write and just let things go. I find that also works for me when I'm working on book reviews for Pride magazine. I know that there's a particular book that I have to write about. I do all the research, and then I just kind of just let it go. Just let it go. And then I go back and do the editing and looking over and, things of that nature. So these are, ways and little techniques that you can use to sort of help you with actually any type of writing that you're doing. Now, once I gave a workshop, and someone who does quite a bit of freelance writing said, well, when I write, I always think about how to get to the point as quickly as I can. And that technique worked fine for that individual. And there are a number of ways to do things. But I really do, when I think about writing, I think about success, even with that method, if you're too caught up on making everything perfect at the very beginning, it can constrict your brain. It can, slow you down. And so that's why I really, really rely on the idea of free writing, turning the faucet on, and just letting the ideas flow. There are a couple of examples that I want to point to. If you want to try something like this in your own time, maybe you have an idea for a story and you're finding that you're blocked. You're unable to focus. You're not sure how to get started even. Just write a line. Start with one line and just let the faucets flow on the page. Maybe you want to write about your mother, or there's something that happened that day that you had an epiphany on and you want to write about that. Just write that line. Today was a terrible day because I wasn't able to start my car. So if that's your topic for that moment in time, just let the pen flow. And another thing is I've done free writing with a pencil, a pen, on paper. I've done free writing on the computer. I do think, and there's a lot of research that shows that there's some benefit with the brain when you actually do put pen to paper that you don't necessarily get when you're using the computer. At the same time, when I've used the computer for free writing, I like that also, because then I don't have to go back and take something from the page and then put it onto the computer later. I've already got everything on the computer and I don't have to worry about it. When I stay on the computer, in my Word program or in my Google Doc or whatever I'm using, I don't have to then go back and do it again. So, there's benefits to both in each. Hi Hi, Hope. Hi, Cassandra. Nice seeing you all. I appreciate you for joining me today. So, another piece of, I guess, for a lot of writers, when I say this, when I'm thinking about peace, I guess I'm thinking about a tip or something that almost every writer or person who wants to write has, usually is some type of journal. Now, I use journals all the time. And right now I'm using this plain red journal. And I like the kind that has a elastic closure component like this one. And then I also like that this one has a pocket for me to put things in. That's my favorite type of journal, honestly. Although I don't have, let's see, do I have one of my artsy ones or nearby? Let's see, is this one? Well, okay, this is a journal that I received, and it's got a spiral back, spiral binder. It's got lined pages. And then another question some people might have is, should the pages be lined or should they be dot matrix? That depends on you. I've done both. I really went through a phase where all of my journals had to be lined. Then I tried the dot matrix and, the dotted, I call it a dot matrix, like, the dotted type of journals where when we were going through the bullet journal phase, when everyone was on the bullet journal trend, people were making these elaborate journals and making colors and writing out calendars and all of that. And they liked the freedom that the dotted journal had to be able to just create however you want to create. I didn't like that style at first, but I began to have some appreciation for it over time. So now I can pretty much use either one. I'm going to use it the same way no matter what, because for me, I'm not a drawer of calendars and pictures and things like that. I'm there to write. I'm there to put my thoughts down, and that's what I'm there for. So that's what I use when I'm using my journals. But I wanted to point that out because the journal is a good place for you to start keeping your thoughts. If you're thinking about writing a book or writing an article or any type of writing, you're going to want to put your thoughts somewhere. And I can say that I've been a journaler or a diaryer from my early elementary years. Someone gave me a cute little pink journal as a child with like a little lock. And I used to use that thing religiously. And that started me on my way of, keeping things in a journal. I also have a electronic journal. I use a particular program called Evernote. It's evolved over time. I like it because I can use it on, anywhere, whether I'm on my phone, on my laptop, wherever I am. Some people like to use the notes format, the notes program that comes with your phone. Of course, you can always use Google Docs, and now you can even use Microsoft Word. So there's so many ways that you can capture your thoughts, no matter where you are, whether you're keeping them in a actual paper journal or you're keeping your thoughts in Evernote or some type of electronic journal. So that being said, I want to give you an exercise. So if you're working on a story or you have an idea about a story or book or something that you'd like to write, I want you to try in your own time free writing. So take that idea for a story, write it in your journal, and just set the clock, set a timer, whether you're using your speaker, I use the Alexa, whether you're setting a timer in your phone, however you're doing it. I'm sorry, I woke her up. She asked me something. She's upset. Or whether you're using a timer on your phone or an old-fashioned egg timer, just start small. Set it for 5 minutes and just try, just writing whatever comes to mind without worrying about, your inner editor, or just to get those thoughts out. Another idea might be maybe you have a memory that you could be a memory from your past, or maybe a dream that you had, and just sort of practice with free writing and see where it takes you. It really helped me because I learned that if I wanted to move forward with that story idea that I had, I needed to move off of the first page and stop rewriting the same paragraph over and over again to the point of perfection, to move on to the rest of the story so that I could get closer and closer to completion. So I hope that makes sense. Let's see. I don't think I can. Well, I can't really ask any questions about that, but so that's what I wanted to share with you today. This is something that helped me tremendously. I was able to move forward. It helped me productively with other aspects of my writing life, whether, even if it's at work or the freelance writing that I do with Pride Magazine, writing press releases for bosses that needed help, even with just getting started with anything. And it's a muscle you have to practice getting comfortable with. It's not something that may just be, you may be able to just use overnight, like, oh, okay, I'm great at free writing now. You have to become comfortable with it, because we have that inner editor in our ear that's constantly telling us, you didn't put the comma in the right place, you didn't use a semicolon properly, you didn't use the appropriate verb here. Just throw all that out the window. You can always go back later. That's the point. You can always go back later and revise, but you're never going to get started or even know if you're able to get started if you don't just sit down and write what comes to mind. So I hope that this has been helpful. This was my live learning